Hi friends, what's up? I hope you are doing well. And today I'm gonna essentially talk about like how blockchain could potentially revolutionize the identity management space for the telecom industry, right? So let me give you an example. So essentially, whenever you travel, like let's say you're traveling from like India to the US, and currently in India you must be using like Airtel, right? So whenever you go to US, probably you might be switched to essentially like AT&T or any of those like Verizon and any of those local carrier providers. So as per laws and regulations, right, essentially these telecom operators, since the potential customer is essentially on roaming, they have something called inter agreements, right? So they have inter call charges, inter roaming charges, etc., etc. So they have a certain particular amount of agreement which has to be essentially in compliance with the local laws and jurisdictions. So which means that whenever you are essentially using your Indian SIM card or your Indian mobile number in the US to potentially call, receive, or browse whatever the data it is, you are essentially doing it on the local network in the US, which is like probably could be AT&T or Verizon. So whenever you're doing that, every single time your SIM card essentially contains certain kind of keys. So there are two types of keys, right? Like there's essentially a private key and a public key, right? So mobile number could be, in this scenario, is your like essentially public key which you share it with everyone. So whenever you make a call, your SIM cards passes on certain kind of an encrypted mechanism which is potentially to verify you. And also the telecom providers have to kind of link it back to your public key, which is your mobile number. So that's the reason whenever you call someone, like your mobile number is essentially reflected. But this entire communication has to be made sure that it's encrypted, and every single time an identity of a particular person is mapped, so they could essentially use it to billing it to you. So a lot of times what happens is that since these AT&T and Airtel and all of these service providers, right, since they are located probably in India and the US, of course there cannot be one direct transmission tower or one tower which would probably connect both of them. So your network or your call would probably bounce from one network provider to other network provider. So let's say, for example, the nearest from India could be somewhere probably Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, London, Denmark, and then probably in the US or New York or somewhere like that. So whenever this bounce is happening, you're essentially sharing your identity with every time in real time. Imagine just in 1 second or probably less than a second, your data is essentially your identity or your keys are like hopped every single time. And whenever this is happening, an individual person's data is essentially shared. A lot of time what happens is that during this entire process, essentially the chances are your data could be compromised. For example, there could be some hackers, there could be some malpractices, or there could be some data mismanagement, or probably someone would just tap into the network, like how we see in the movies, right? Some criminal, they use some kind of SIM card manipulation, and probably also don't provide, or probably also provide a lot of time there's like stolen identities and all of that. So it's a really very big challenge, and a lot of times you would see a person's number is being used for illegal purposes and all of that. So the whole idea is how you're going to essentially solve them, because whenever you go there, whenever you apply for a SIM card, you just submit your like identity proof and all of that. And the chances are that not same data would probably be shared, because your mobile number in India would be in the name of like Prashant, and the same mobile number similarly, let's say if you have been using it with like Vodafone or any other service providers previously before, would be in some XYZ name. So this entire transfer management of this data and all of that is like a super complicated process. And essentially what blockchain could potentially do is like it could bring all of them on the same platform. And the good part is that whenever you are essentially sharing your like your identity, there's this concept called self-sovereign identity, meaning is that one could potentially verify or person or share that data like without actually sharing with it. So all your data is encrypted, so to verify you're just sharing your keys. So essentially think of something like that you go to a bank and you want to open your safety deposit box. Of course, you would show your identity card, but for further more verification, what you're going to do is you're going to essentially also show your key. So you're going to put your key in the locker, and then there's a bank manager who would put both of the keys, and this is how you're going to essentially verify yourself. So similarly in the blockchain, right, whenever you upload your identity there are keys created through mechanism of hashing, and that keys could be shared with everyone in real time, and all the participants are connected to a same book of record forged. Just think of that every person in the telecom network is sharing the same copy of your trusted data. So meaning using this, right, every single time whenever you go, you could travel without like verifying yourself or sharing your passport details or your actual detail, where the data leakages and the data frauds and etc. essentially happen. You could just share these keys and you would just verify yourself that this is Prashant, this is Aisha, this is Rebecca, or something like that, right? And this is how it's going to make the identity management in the telecom industry like super smooth. And since every data is shared in an end-to-end encrypted format, the chances of that being actually hacking would be like also very, very less, because a hacker would have to like break in the keys, which would require them to use brute force computing. So this is one of the very interesting example where one could use their identity on the blockchain for the telecom industry. And similarly, this identity, think of this identity as a use case for like a lot of different things. So when you Google and when you study about how blockchain is used in identity, you would see tremendous opportunities, right? And if you're looking or interested to pursue blockchain as your career, I would say this is the best time because the space is picking up and the data and is becoming a very, very important thing right now. And how this data manages or being managed in the lot of life cycles or a lot of use cases is the key concern area as of today. And blockchain is exactly that technology which is based on data infrastructure and how you would use your data, how would you make sure communication between one company or one participant to participant like more efficient and more secured, importantly. So guys, keep following on the blockchain, keep commenting if you have some interesting ideas, or if you have some ideas where you have certain doubts in the blockchain space, or if you have any doubts regarding your career, or you want to know where and how, which is the best place to start. You could always reach out to me, and also you could visit like indianblockchaininstitute.com, and also you could go to our enterprise blockchain site, which is snapperfuturetech.com, if you want to know how what are the potential solutions in blockchain industry for your business, right guys? So thank you so much guys, cheers, and keep learning, keep sharing, and of course, like as always, blockchain is the future of internet. Thank you guys, cheers, bye bye.